So moving on to more sales related things, and this is also kind of in the vein of training. Imagine that. One of the things that we run into a lot right now are people trying to save money on cars, and a lot of the folks that have hired in at car dealerships in the last couple of years, they're essentially not used to just taking an order, basically. With the chip shortage and COVID and all those things, people just don't have the dynamic skills right now. They're not sharp on that in a lot of respects. And vehicles are also a lot more complicated. And being fair to all those involved inside of car dealerships, there really aren't enough hours in the day to learn all the different ins and outs of all the different vehicles. And so this is actually kind of a near and dear to my heart thing because my mom is actually going through this scenario right now. So the example I have just set up here real quick, and I kind of go through this. My mom wants to buy a RAV4 hybrid, and I'm like, you don't need a hybrid, mom. But they're convinced that they need to. But I've gone through this scenario even back in retail, 15, 20 years ago. What people don't realize, a lot of times these vehicles aren't necessarily available. So the question I asked Susan, who's our expert sales manager, I have a customer who is very interested in a RAV4 hybrid or a RAV4 Prime, but the factory doesn't ship enough of those vehicles to us. Gas is currently 2.97 a gallon in our area. The Toronto guys gasp because their gas is like what 5.50, 5.60 a gallon there, roughly. So how many miles per year would the customer have to drive to break even from getting a regular RAV4 to a RAV4 hybrid or RAV4 Prime? The starting MSRPs for the three vehicles are below. So literally, I just wrote that little blurb there for the question, went to Toyota's website, copied and pasted similarly equipped vehicles that are on there. I didn't go through a build process. I didn't pick something from inventory. I just kept it brutally simple so anybody can do this. Great question. To calculate the break-even point, we'll need to compare the fuel efficiency of each model and factor in the price differences. But let's break this down step by step, okay? Susan's expertly trained. I didn't have to tell her anything. She went ahead and found the proper fuel economy, so right off the sticker, basically, for all the vehicles without any kind of extra help. So here's the thing, 35, 30 combined, 41, 38. The RAV4 Prime, which I really was pretty impressed because she figured out that it's 36 highway, 38 combined in hybrid mode, and 94 miles per gallon in MPGE, which is the equivalent. So then let's calculate the fuel cost. So then it broke down the amount of miles and did all the math essentially to show that if you want to buy a RAV4 regular versus hybrid, you'd basically have to drive the hybrid version 102,000 plus miles to break even on the cost differential. Now, I'll say caveat, and as a math guy, I know, hey, gas is going to fluctuate. There's other parameters, right? But at a very, very basic level, that's the difference. And between the RAV4 XLE and the Prime, it's 227,000 miles because there's something like a $10,000 difference in price there. So it makes that really, really simple for the person who's doing this to understand like how I can take this and now pitch this to my customer potentially, or position what I have in inventory or vice versa, or however that goes. So, however, it's important to note that these calculations don't factor in potential tax incentives for the Prime, differences in maintenance costs, the convenience of plug-in charging for the Prime, and potential increases in gas prices over time. So the system's going to call me out automatically. And one thing I can never shut up about AutoAgenic is that it's always training the user. It's always giving inputs. It's always giving advice. It's always giving next steps. And so if you can imagine somebody in the showroom using this who may not have a lot of product understanding or may not have very good control even of the vernacular of the vehicles we're talking about, it's going to give them passive education while they're doing this. So, this is great. What other variables should I incorporate to help the customer make the best decision? The dealership and customer are both in Michigan, so there might be state and federal incentives still available. So let's just see what it says. You're absolutely right to consider additional variables, especially given the location. Here are some key factors we should incorporate to help the customer make the best decision. So it talks about the state and federal incentives, charging infrastructure. That's something that is a good point of discussion. Driving habits, climate considerations, maintenance costs, resale value, future fuel prices. So you can see the list goes on and on. So again, this is an educational component. Now it's teaching the user about these different things. So in the future, they can come up with this on the fly, or if they're in a showroom conversation or a conversation a lot, they have those details to talk about it. So let's make it useful. Can you draft an email response based on your findings and incorporate the questions around driving habits? That's key factor three. Certainly, here's a draft. Here's my subject. Are you interested in Toyota RAV4 models? Dear customer name, thank you for your interest in the Toyota RAV4, particularly, the hybrid and prime models. I appreciate your patience as I gathered some detailed information to help you make the best decision. Based on current gas prices and starting MSRPs, I've calculated some interesting break-even points. So here's your break-even points. However, these calculations don't tell the whole story. To help you determine which model will be best for you, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your driving habits. What's your average daily commute distance? How often do you take longer trips? Over 100 miles? Do you have access to charging at home or at work? And so if you guys if you guys know CRM process and communications, like these are good engaging questions to the customer to respond back. It's also going to help us then better position ourselves as a dealership to help them out. So your answers will help us determine if the Prime's 42-mile electric range could significantly reduce your gas mileage. Also, as a Michigan resident, you might be eligible for federal tax credits of up to $7,500 for the RAV4 Prime, which could substantially reduce the price difference. Other factors to consider include potential lower maintenance costs for hybrid models, Michigan's climate and its effect on battery performance, availability of public charging stations in your area, your interest in reducing environmental impact, which we know some people it's a philosophical thing. I'd be happy to discuss these points in more detail and answer any questions you might have. Would you like to schedule a call or visit the dealership to explore your options further? Looking forward to helping you find the perfect RAV4 for your needs. So for me, this is such a great jumping off point for this type of customer. But more importantly, if I don't know anything about these vehicles for the most part, or I don't know about these points to bring up to the customer, it automatically puts those things in for me. So as a user, being the human in the loop, I can go back through and I can read these things, just make sure, hey, this I'm comfortable with this, or maybe I want to add this, or maybe I want to tweak a little bit of the wording. But when I'm done, I just copy and paste it and send it. I'm good to go. And I can say that when I go through this with people who aren't, steeped in dealership culture or haven't been, kind of had certain bad habits beaten into their heads, maybe it's just one of those things where like they're blown away because they would not ever get a response like this from a dealership. They haven't gotten that in the past. And this is just one of those good examples of how we can get that jumping off point. I don't have to tell Susan to invite the customer in. I don't have to tell her to do that, but like I can tell you that I've worked with hundreds of people who I can bring that up weekly to them and they still don't invite the customer in for an email and it's already built in.